Welcome students, this is Santosh Jood from Parthank Mathematics Institute, Ahmedabad. Parthank Institute is presenting to you the solutions of the mathematics part of these NTA test papers. In this video, I will be taking you through the solutions of NTA test paper number 2. Let us begin. The first question. Let Z1 and Z2 be the nth roots of unity, which are ends of a line segment that subtend a right angle at the origin. Then n must be of the form. Now they have given us that Z1 and Z2 are two nth roots of unity, and they, on the complex plane have this line segment between them which subtends an angle 90 degrees at the origin. This is the condition given. Let us proceed to the solution. We know that the nth roots of unity can be written as cos 2r pi by n plus 2 plus I into sin 2r pi by n. We know r tends from 0, 1 up to n minus 1. Let us say that Z1 is the pth root of unity, pth of these n roots. So r is equal to p would give me cos of 2p pi by n plus I sin 2p pi by n. The same way, let us say Z2 is the qth of these n roots. So cos 2q pi by n plus I sin 2q pi by n. Right? Now they have given us that these two subtend an angle 90 degree, the line segment here, which means that the argument of Z1, which Z2, which is this full angle, this is argument of Z2, minus the argument of Z1, which is this angle, will give us 90 degrees. Right? Let us write it down. Argument of Z2 minus argument of Z1 should be pi by 2 radians. Now the argument of Z2 is nothing but 2q pi by n, and the argument of Z1 is nothing but 2p pi by n. So 2q pi by n minus 2p pi by n is pi by 2. Cancel pi and take the 2 common and 2 by n common. I get 2 by n q minus p is 1 by 2, or n is equal to 4 times q minus p. Since we know p, q are all numbers between 0 to n minus 1, we have q minus p also is an integer, so which can be k. So n should be of the form 4k. N is a multiple of 4 basically. So that is option D here, 4k. A very simple problem. Remember the geometric representation of the complex numbers. You get it directly. Question number 2. In 0, 2 pi, the total number of points where f of x is the maximum of sin x, cos x and 1 minus cos x is not differentiable are equal to. Now, how would this graph look like? Let us take the axis. Okay, 0, pi by 2, pi, 3 pi by 2 and 2 pi, and try to plot all these functions. First, let us do sin x. Now sin x we know, at x is equal to 0, sin x is 0. At x is equal to pi by 2, sin x is 1. At x is pi, sin x is 0. At x is 3 pi by 2, it is minus 1. And at x is equal to 2 pi, it becomes 0. Therefore, I have this sine curve. Alright. So this is sin x in red. Now let us see how would cos x look like. Now cos x starts from 1, right? When x is 0, cos x is 1. X is 90, cos x is 0. 180 minus 1, 3 pi by 2, 0 and 1. So therefore, it is the same like sin x, but they say a 90 degrees in advance. The values that sin x takes after 90 degrees, cos x takes earlier. Now let's go to the third one. The third one is 1 minus cos x, and let us find the points through which it passes. When x is equal to 0, 1 minus cos x, 1 minus 0 is 0, 1 minus cos 0 is 1. When x is equal to pi by 2, 1 minus cos x is 1 minus 0, which is 1. When x is pi, cos x is minus 1. So 1 minus minus 1 is 2. And when x is 3 pi by 2, it is 1 again, and here it becomes 0. Now the curve should pass like this. Okay, right? Now the question says that f of x is the maximum of all these. That is, you are looking at the maximum of these three functions. So you see, in this region, that is between 0 and this point of intersection, the maximum is here. This area is maximum. In this region, the maximum is this part. In this region, the maximum is of course the blue line itself, and in this region, the maximum is this section. So focus on this over the enveloping blue line, right? So this is f of x. And in this, we have 3 points which are non-differentiable, 1, 2 and 3. Why are they non-differentiable? Because you know that the tangent at this point will have two different values for the slope. You can have a tangent like this, or you can have a tangent like this. The same way the tangents here will also have two different values, tangents here will have two different slopes. So these 3 points are non-differentiable. Understood? So the number of points where the curve is non-differentiable is 3. So the answer is option A, 3. Of course, you can find the values of these points, the x values of these points. This is where sin x and cos x are matching. Therefore, this should be pi by 2. This point we know is pi by 4, sorry. This should be pi by 2. And here it is 1 minus cos x, and cos x are equal. This means cos x is 1 by 2. And in the fourth quadrant, that happens for 5 pi by 3. So this is 5 pi by 3. Right? I hope you understood the solution. Plot the 3 curves, find the maximum, that is the envelope of all the 3 curves, and note down where they are discontinuous. Now the same question, if the question was given as the minimum instead of maximum here, if the question was the minimum, then you know that the minimum is this curve in this section, and here it will be this part, and here this part. So the minimum has 2 points that are non-differentiable. The maximum has 3 points that are non-differentiable. The minimum has 2 points that are non-differentiable. Anyways, moving on to the question number 3. The integral x cos x cos inverse of 1 minus x squared by 1 plus x squared dx is what? Now looking at this 1 minus x squared by 1 plus x squared should say that substituting x is equal to tan theta is going to give us a nice simplification, because 1 minus x squared by 1 plus x squared is going to become 1 minus tan squared theta by 1 plus tan squared theta, which we know by identity is cos of 2 theta. So that would eliminate the cos inverse term here. Okay, and of course dx we need is secant squared theta d theta. So substituting this in the integral, we have x is tan theta, cos inverse of the whole bracket is cos 2 theta into dx is secant squared theta d theta. Right? So this cos inverse of cos 2 theta becomes 2 theta. So 2 theta tan theta secant squared theta d theta is the integral. Now take this as u, because we are going to do integration by parts, and du is straightforward d theta. All the rest you take as dv, that is 2 tan theta secant squared theta d theta as dv. So v is nothing but the integral of the whole term, 2 tan theta secant squared theta d theta. Here again let us make use of another substitution. U is tan theta, and that would give me du is secant squared theta d theta. Right? So this v part is nothing but integral 2 u du, which is nothing but u squared, and u is tan theta, so that is tan squared theta. Alright? Now this was only for substitution. Please do not confuse this u and this u here. So v is tan squared theta, dv, u, du, everything is here. Let us go to the integration by parts. We know u dv integral is uv minus integral v du. So u is theta, v is tan squared theta, minus integral v is again tan squared theta, and du is d theta. So keep this separate. And how do we integrate tan squared theta? Write it as secant squared theta minus 1 d theta. So integral of secant squared theta becomes minus tan theta, and the integral of plus 1 becomes just theta and the arbitrary constant. Now remember, tan theta was our x initially. So theta will be tan inverse of x. So using these here, the integral is theta is tan inverse of x. Tan square theta is x squared because tan theta is x, minus tan theta is again x, and theta is nothing but tan inverse of x. Or taking the terms tan inverse of x common, I get x squared plus 1 tan inverse of x, this and this together, minus x plus c. So x squared plus 1 tan inverse of x minus x plus c, and this is option minus x plus 1 plus x squared tan inverse of x plus c d. Right? A very simple problem. Identifying the 1 minus x squared by 1 plus x squared can be simplified using x is tan theta. Question number 4. The coefficient of x to the power n in the polynomial x plus 2n plus 1 c0 into x plus 2n plus 1 c1 and so on up to 2n plus 1 cn. Okay? Okay. So now you see there are how many terms here, starting from 0, 1, 2 up to n, right? So there are n plus 1 terms totally. N plus 1 terms in this. Now if you need coefficient of x to the power n, what does it mean? You should multiply x in each of these brackets, in n of these brackets, and the constant term in the last bracket, right? For example, you multiply x to the power, to get x to the power n, you can multiply x into x into x into x in all the brackets and then plus this. Or you can multiply x into this x and skip this x here, multiply this number, and then all the other x's you will get x power n. What I mean is, the coefficient of x power n is nothing but the summation of these terms, because there will be one x power n formed by this multiplied by the x's in all the other n brackets. Then you take this term and take the x in all the other brackets, you will have another term. So if you add all these terms, you will get the coefficient of x power n. Otherwise, if you would like to remember, you know that in any expression, you remember this identity, x plus a into x plus b into x plus c. This would become x cubed plus a plus b plus c into x squared. So you see, the x squared depends on all these three. Here n was 3. So same way, if you need, the idea is you take x in two brackets and the constant term in the other bracket. So cx squared, x in these two brackets and constant here bx squared, x in these two brackets and a here ax squared. So a plus b plus c is the coefficient. Therefore, extend this to an arbitrary number of terms. You can say in this expression, the coefficient of x power n can be written as 2n plus 1 c0 plus 2n plus 1 c1 plus 2n plus 1 c2 plus and so on up to 2n plus 1 cn. Let us call this s. Summation of this is s, and this will give us the coefficient that we are looking for. Now how to do this? Let us rewrite this also using the idea that NCR can be written as NC n minus r. Therefore, this can be written as 2n plus 1 c 2n plus 1. This can be written as 2n plus 1 c, 2n plus 1 minus 1, so 2n. This can be written as 2n plus 1 c, 2n plus 1 minus 2, so 2n minus 1. And the last term would be 2n plus 1 c, 2n plus 1 minus n, 2n, excuse me, let me just correct this. So the last term is going to be 2n plus 1 c, 2n plus 1 minus n is n plus 1. What is the advantage of doing this? Add both these equations and you will see 2s will become 2n plus 1 c0, c1, c2, c3 up to cn, and then here it will continue from n plus 1, n plus 2, n plus 3 up to 2n plus 1. So you basically have 2n plus 1 c0, 2n plus 1 c1 up to 2n plus 1 c 2n plus 1, right? That is 2s. Now of course we know that nc0 plus nc1 plus nc2 plus and so on up to ncn is 2 raised to n. Therefore 2n plus 1 c0 plus 2n plus 1 c1 up to 2n plus 1 c 2n plus 1 is 2 raised to 2n plus 1. Therefore that 2 times the summation is 2 raised to 2n plus 1, or the summation is 2 raised to 2n plus 1 by 2. Now this numerator can be simplified as 2 raised to 2n into 2 by 2. So 2 raised to 2n is the coefficient of x to the power n. A very simple idea. Remember this expression of binomial theorem. So the answer is 2 raised to 2n d. Moving on to question number 5. A simple problem based on statistics. The mean of a data set comprising of 16 observations is 16. So there are 16 observations and the mean is 16. Therefore, the summation of the x values is x bar into n, right? So that would be 256. If one of the observation valued 16 is deleted, now we are deleting one number minus 16. So therefore n would become 15 and summation of x would become 256 minus 16, which is 240. And 3 new observations valued 3, 4 and 5 are added to the data. So there is a plus 3, plus 4 and plus 5. 3 more numbers, so n will become 18 and summation of x will become 240 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, which is 252. Therefore, the new mean will be 252 upon 18, which is 14. So the answer is option A, 14. A very straightforward problem. Moving on to question number 6. This question is based on pair of straight lines idea. The straight lines, the lines represented by the equation x squared plus 2 square root of 3xy plus 3y squared minus 3x minus 3 root 3y minus 4 is equal to 0 are. Now, we know that the general form of the pair of straight lines is ax squared plus 2hxy plus by squared plus 2gx plus 2fy plus c is 0, right? And we know that these two lines will be parallel if h square is ab, because the question is all between parallel and perpendicular. They will be perpendicular if a plus b is 0. And of course we know that the angle is plus or minus h square minus ab by a plus b. Some texts give mod of this value, right? So both these conditions are contained here. When they are parallel, this angle is 0 and therefore h square should be ab. When it is perpendicular, this is going to be infinite, which means the denominator is 0 and a plus b should be 0. Okay. So this is the condition for parallel and this is the condition for perpendicular. Let us see from the given equation what condition is satisfied. So a is 1, comparing the coefficients, 2h is 2 root 3 and b is 3. So h is root 3. Okay. Now of course h square obviously is AB here. Root 3 square is 3 into 1. So this condition is satisfied, hence the lines are parallel. Okay. Now also, those of you who have a sharp eye would have noticed that this is actually a perfect square form. So if you are doing it in a very direct procedure, you can write that as x minus root 3y the whole square. And if you take a root 3 from, it is x plus root 3y the whole square. And if you take a root 3 from the next two terms, you can write that also as, if you take a 3, if you take a 3 you can write x plus root 3y minus 4 is 0. And this can be written as x plus root 3y minus 4 into x plus root 3y plus 1 is 0. Because the roots, the factors would be minus 4 and plus 1 to satisfy this quadratic equation. Now you see that these two lines are parallel. Both have the same slope, minus 1 by root 3. To be quick, remember these conditions for the parallel, perpendicular and the general formula for the angle. So we can easily deduce h square is AB and therefore the lines are parallel to each other. Question number 7. At present, a firm is manufacturing 2000 items. It is estimated that the rate of change of production with respect to additional number of workers x is given by dp by dx is equal to 100 minus 12x. If the firm employs 25 more workers, then the new level of production of items is. Remember, x is nothing but the additional number of workers, right? So the initial case where the present production without any extra people is actually x is 0 and the production is 2000, because there are no additional workers and the production is 2000, and they have given us the rate of change of production as 100 minus 12 square root of x. The question is to find when 25 new workers are brought in, which means x is 25 because x is the additional number of workers, right? So this is a very straightforward integration. If I integrate both sides with respect to x, I get p is 100x minus 12 into, this is x to the power 1 by 2, integral of x to the power 1 by 2 is x to the power 3 by 2 by 3 by 2, right? So I put that here, x to the power 3 by 2 upon 3 by 2 plus some arbitrary constant c. Now this is 4 and 1, so this becomes 100x minus 8 into x power 3 by 2 is x into square root of x plus c. Now the c can be evaluated using this condition. X is equal to 0, p should be 2000. So in this equation, 2000 will be equal to 0 minus 0 plus c, or c is 2000. Now that gives us p. All you have to do is substitute x is equal to 25 in that and solve for it. So p is 100x minus 8x root x plus 2000. When x is 25, 25 additional workers come, p becomes 100 into 25 minus 8 into 25 into root 25 plus 2000. This is 2500 and this is 8 into 200, 200 into 5 is 1000 plus 2000, which becomes 3500. So the new production would be 3500. This is option A, 3500. Clear? A very simple differential equation, but remember this, that when x was 0, no additional workers, the original amount, production was 2000. Question number 8. Let f be a real valued function, be a periodic function such that f of t plus x is equal to 1 plus 1 minus 3f plus 3x squared minus f cubed the whole power 1 by 3. t is a fixed positive number, then the period of f of x is. Alright, interesting question. See that this bracket term is nothing but 1 minus f of x the whole cube, right? Because 1 minus f of x the whole cube will be a cube 1 minus 3a squared b, so 3f of x plus 3ab squared f of x the whole square minus b cube f of x the whole cube, right? Now you substitute this in the place of the whole thing, I get f of t plus x is 1 plus 1 minus f of x the whole cube raised to the power 1 by 3. Now the cube and the cube root cancel each other, and I have 1 plus 1 minus f of x, which is 2 minus f of x. Alright, so f of t plus x is 2 minus f of x, or f of t plus x plus f of x is equal to 2. Right? Now using this, how can we calculate the period of the function? Let us keep this f of t plus x plus f of x is 2. Now this should hold for any value of x, right? So let us take a value of x as t plus x. Now that should give me f of t plus x plus f of t plus x is 2, or f of 2t plus x plus f of t plus x is 2. Let us call this equation 1 and this as equation 2. If you subtract 2 and 1, you can see that this term f of t plus x will get cancelled on the left hand side, and on the right hand side the 2 gets cancelled. So this becomes f of 2t plus x minus f of x is equal to 0. This implies f of 2t plus x is equal to f of x. That is, after 2t, x brings the same value for f of x. So therefore, you know, right, the period of the function is such that f of p plus x should be equal to f of x. Then you can say p is the period of that function. The same way here, in the place of p we have 2t. So the period of this function is 2t, which is option B, 2t. Right? Good. Let us move on to question number 9. AB is a vertical tower. The point A is on the ground. C is the midpoint of AB. So C divides AB in 2. The part CB subtends an angle alpha at a point P on the ground. So there's another point P such that this segment CB subtends an angle alpha. It is given that AP is equal to n times AB, then the correct relation between n and alpha is. Okay, a very simple heights and distances problem. Let us call this angle theta, so that the whole angle is theta plus alpha. So in the full triangle, that is triangle ABP, tan of theta plus alpha is given by AB upon AP, right? And AB is n times, AP is n times AB. So you use this relationship here. I get tan of theta plus alpha is 1 by n. Let us take the smaller triangle, that is triangle ACP. In this triangle, tan theta would be AC by AP, right? And we know AC is nothing but AB by 2 because C is the middle point. And we know AP is nothing but NAB. So this would give us 1 by 2n. That is tan theta is 1 by 2n. Tan theta plus alpha is 1 by n, tan theta is 1 by 2n. Eliminate theta from these two and you get the required relationship. How to do that? Let us write tan theta is 1 by 2n and tan theta plus alpha is 1 by n. Now theta plus alpha, tan theta plus alpha can be expanded as tan theta plus tan alpha by 1 minus tan theta tan alpha. So now this is equal to 1 by n. Substitute the value for tan theta here. So 1 by 2n plus tan alpha by 1 minus 1 by 2n tan alpha is 1 by n, right? So this becomes 1 plus 2n tan alpha by 2n minus tan alpha is 1 upon n. Take the LCM, cancel all that. Simplify, do the algebra carefully. 2n squared tan alpha is equal to 2n minus tan alpha, or collecting the terms on one side, 2n squared plus 1 tan alpha, bringing this here and take the n to the other side, becomes 2n minus n, which is n. Therefore the required relationship is 2n squared plus 1 times tan alpha is equal to n. Let's see if this is in the options. 2n squared plus 1 tan alpha is equal to n, option B. Right? Very simple heights and distances problem. Question number 10. If f of x is given as x plus 1 in the region x greater than 1. So let us say this is x is greater than 1. In this region it is x plus 1. It is 0 at x is equal to 1. At this point itself it is 0. And at x less than 1 it is 7 minus 3x. So in this region it is 7 minus 3x. In this region it is x plus 1. Now the question is f dash of 0. Now 0 lies here. So use this function and find the f dash of x. So f dash of x, if you differentiate this, it becomes minus 3. And therefore f dash of 0 also is minus 3. So the answer is minus 3. Very simple. Nothing to do with continuity, discontinuity, differentiability, non-differentiability, nothing at all. 0 is a nice point in this region and you get simple differentiation. Question number 11. If x is minus 1 and x is 2 are points of extrema of f of x is equal to a log mod x plus beta x squared plus x, then what are the values of alpha and beta? Okay. Now we have a certain function. Now we know that the extrema means either the maxima or minima are points where f dash of x is equal to 0, right? Therefore, at x is equal to minus 1 and 2, f dash of x should be equal to 0. This would give us the conditions to evaluate alpha and beta. Alright? So, f dash of x, how to calculate f dash of x? Now alpha log mod x, if I differentiate I get alpha by x plus 2 beta x plus 1. Now some of you might think what happens to this mod x, but do not worry because log of x, log of mod x means log x when x is positive or log minus x when x is negative, right? This is for x greater than 0, x less than 0. So when you differentiate in the positive region it will be 1 by x. In the negative region when you differentiate this it will be 1 by minus x into minus 1 which becomes 1 by x again. So do not worry about the mod here. This is just alpha by x plus 2 beta x plus 1. Now as we told, at x is equal to minus 1 and at x is equal to 2, f dash of x should be equal to 0. So therefore f dash of minus 1 would be minus alpha plus 4 beta plus 1 is 0. Or we can say alpha minus 4 beta should be equal to 1. Now f dash of 2 would give us alpha by 2 plus 4 beta, this should have been minus 2 beta. Excuse me, minus 2 beta. So this is alpha plus 2 beta should be 1. And this becomes alpha by 2 plus 4 beta plus 1 is 0. Therefore, alpha plus 8 beta should be equal to minus 2. So these are the two equations that you have to solve to obtain the values of alpha and beta. Alpha plus 2 beta is 1, alpha plus 8 beta is minus 2. So alpha plus 2 beta is 1 and alpha plus 8 beta is minus 2. Subtract them both, you get minus 6 beta is 3 and beta is minus 1 by 2. Substitute this back in the first equation. Alpha plus 2 into minus 1 by 2 is 1, or alpha becomes 1 plus 1, 2. So alpha beta is 2 and minus 1 by 2. Okay. So that is option A, 2 and minus 1 by 2. Very simple idea. Find the derivative and at x is equal to minus 1 and x is equal to 2, the values are 0. Question number 12. X takes all permissible negative values, then sine inverse of x is equal to. Now sine inverse of x is defined only when x is between minus 1 and 1, both limits included. Therefore, all negative values permissible means minus 1 to 0, this interval. Okay. So here in this problem, x should be in the interval minus 1 to 0. Then sine inverse of x is equal to in terms of cos inverse. So what we know is x is a negative number, right? So let us say x is equal to minus some number y, where y is a positive number greater than 0. Okay. So sine inverse of minus y can be written as minus sine inverse of y. Alright. Now sine inverse of y in terms of cos inverse becomes square root of 1 minus y square, because you can consider this as a triangle. Sine theta is y upon 1. So y is the opposite, this is the hypotenuse, so this is, y squared minus 1. I stand corrected here. This should be, no, the mistake is here. So this is y and this is 1. So this is 1 minus y squared. Therefore, cos inverse of 1 minus y squared. Now if you see from this equation that we have written, 1 minus y squared is equal to x squared, because x squared, when you square both sides, is the same. So minus y squared can be written as just x squared. So this becomes minus cos inverse of 1 minus x squared, right? So the answer is option A, minus cos inverse of square root of 1 minus x squared. Question number 13. F of x is equal to pi of k equal to 1 to 999. This means the product of all such terms. Kx squared minus 47x plus k. Then the product of all the real roots of f of x is equal to 0 is. This seems like an incredibly difficult problem, but you see that the roots of this whole product is going to be all the roots of these quadratic equations. And when you need the product of all the roots, it is to find the product of these two roots. Find the product of the two roots of this equation and then take the product of them all. That is the answer. What do I mean? Take the equation. The first of those equations would be, now this will have two roots, right? If these two roots are, let us say, alpha and beta, then the product of those two roots will be k, because it is k by 1. You know the product of the roots is c by a and the sum of the roots is minus b by a. So the sum of the roots, for example here, would be 47 and product of the roots would be 1. Therefore, x squared minus 47x plus 1 is equal to 0. The product of the roots will be 1. When it is x squared minus 47x plus 2 is equal to 0, the product of the two roots here will be 2. And so on. Up to x squared minus 47x plus 999 is equal to 0. The product of the roots is going to be 999. So the product of all these roots is going to be 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5 up to 999. And the answer is going to be 999 factorial. But don't forget this word real. So we'll have to check how many of these roots are real and how many are imaginary. Right? Because it is true that the product of all the roots is 999 factorial, even if there are complex roots. But all real roots, let's see till where we have. What is the condition that the equation x squared plus 47x plus k minus 47x, plus k is equal to 0 should have real roots. The real roots condition is b square minus 4ac is greater than or equal to 0. Now b square is 47 square minus 4ac is 4k should be greater than or equal to 0. 47 square is 2209 minus 4k is greater than or equal to 0, or 2209 is greater than or equal to 4k, or k should be less than or equal to 552.25. Therefore, the maximum value that k can take is 552 to have real roots. 553 onwards would be imaginary roots. Therefore, in this sequence here, x square minus 47x plus 552 equals 0. The product of the roots is going to be 552. Till here we'll have real, and everything beyond this is going to be complex conjugate. Therefore, the product of all the roots is this product into this product into, so 1 into 2 into 3 up to 552, which is 552 factorial. Option C. So be careful about where it becomes real and where it becomes complex. Question number 14. In a certain town, 25% families own a cell phone, 15% families own a scooter, and 65% families own neither a cell phone nor a scooter. If 1,500 families own both a cell phone and a scooter, then the total number of families in the town is. Okay? So, how does this question look like? Let us call the number of people in the town as X. Number of people in the town. What are we given here? We are told that the number of people who have a cell phone, let us call it N of C, is 25%, right? So that is 25 by 100 of X. The number of people who have a scooter, they have said is 15%, so 15 by 100 of X. Now the number of families who own both cell phone and scooter is N of C intersection S, and that is 1,500. Both. And then own neither can be written as N of not phone and not scooter, right? And not scooter. This is 65%. Alright. So now this can be simplified slightly. We know that N of C dash intersection S dash is the same as N of C union S the whole dash, right? De Morgan's law. C union S the whole dash is going to be C dash intersection S dash. Therefore, what they have given is N of C union S the whole dash. And using these three pieces of information, if we can manage to find N of C union S, we know that N of C union S plus N of C union S dash should be equal to the whole set, which is X, right? Always N of A plus N of A complement will be equal to the total number of elements in the set X. Therefore, let us try to find N of C union S from these three pieces of information. n of C union S will be n of C plus n of S minus n of C intersection S. So that gives me 25 by 100x, 15 by 100x minus 1500. Now substituting this in this equation, n of C union S and n of C union S dash is x, gives me 25x by 100 plus 15x by 100 minus 1500 plus this was 65x by 100 is x. Alright. So 25 plus 15 minus 65 is 5x by 100, and I bring the x to the side and take the minus 1500 there. I'm sorry, this is 105x by 100. So subtracting these two will give me 5x upon 100. This is 1500. Therefore x is 1500 into 100 by 5, which is 30,000. So the total number of people in the town is 30,000. Option C, right? The key idea we're using is to transform this to n of C union S the whole dash, and then we know sum of any set plus its complement is the whole set, is the complete set, right? And then using these three pieces of information, calculate n of C union S. Question number 15. The number of ways of arranging 8 men and 4 women around a circular table such that no 2 women can sit together is. So the obvious way of arranging this is arrange the 8 men first and then the 4 women in the gaps between the men. So let us say these are the 8 places that are available for us. And you always remember that circular permutations, whenever you have people arranged in a circle or objects arranged in a circle, if there are n objects, the total number of permutations possible is only n minus 1 factorial. Arrangements in a circle. Remember this. So if there are 8 men, they can be arranged in a circle in 7 factorial ways. And between those 8 men, we have 8 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the 4 women can be arranged in any of these 8 spaces. So the number of ways in which 4 women can be arranged in 8 spaces is 8p4, right? That is, there are 8 places, and in those 8 places you are putting in the 4 women. So the answer is 8p4. So the total is 7 factorial times 8p4. This is the number of ways of arranging men, this is the number of ways of arranging the women. Alright. If you want to think about this a little more explicitly, you think of it like this. From the 8 places, you choose 4 places, that would be 8c4, choose, no, selections, choosing. And in each of these 8c4 places, you can arrange the women in 4 factorial ways. And you know that NCR into R factorial is NPR. So you can come directly to this also. The total answer is 7 factorial into 8p4. So option D. Question number 16. Let A be a matrix, then determinant of A into adjoint of A inverse is equal to. Now, don't rush into trying to find determinant value, finding the inverse, which are both lengthy processes, but try to simplify this. What is the definition of inverse? A matrix X inverse is given as 1 by the determinant of X into adjoint of X. Let us try to see what will be the inverse of A inverse itself. That is, put X is equal to A inverse here. So you get A inverse, the whole inverse, is 1 by A inverse determinant adjoint of A inverse, right? A inverse, the whole inverse is nothing but A, and 1 by determinant of A inverse, we know the determinant of A inverse is nothing but 1 by determinant of A. This becomes determinant of A into adjoint of A inverse. That is, determinant of A into adjoint of A inverse, the given question, is nothing but A, right? So this is equal to the matrix itself. So the answer is option 2. It is not the zero matrix, it is not the identity matrix, it is not some other matrix, but it is equal to A itself. Question number 17. If the equation x squared plus 4 plus 3 sine ax plus b minus 2x is equal to 0 has at least one real solution where a comma b belong to 0 comma 2 pi, then one possible value of a plus b can be equal to. Okay, so we are looking at solutions of x squared plus 4 plus 3 sine ax plus b minus 2x. Now group these terms in this way. That is, you can write x squared minus 2x and this 4 as plus 1 plus 3, and then the 3 sine of ax plus b. Alright. Now this becomes x minus 1 the whole square plus 3 is minus 3 sine of ax plus b. What is the advantage of writing it in this way? You see that this side is 3 plus a positive term, which means it's always going to be greater than 3. Okay, 3 or greater than 3. Now on this side, we know sine x is going to be between minus 1 to plus 1. Right? So the maximum value of this side is going to be 3 and the minimum value is minus 3. So this is going to be between 3 and minus 3. This is always going to be greater than 3. So the only solution is possible when both sides are equal to 3. Right? This side is always greater than or equal to 3, and this side is between 3 and minus 3. If we call the whole function, this function is greater than minus 3 but less than 3. So the only solution possible is 3. Right? If it has to be 3, then the left hand side says x should be equal to 1. So this term can become 0 and this will remain 3. And the right hand side therefore would be sine of a plus b. Now if this equation has to be satisfied, sine of a plus b should be minus 1. And we know that a plus b is minus 1 at values like 3 pi by 2 and then 3 pi by 2 plus 2 pi, that is 7 pi by 2, and then plus 2 pi, 11 pi by 2, and so on, right? 270 degrees, 270 plus 360 plus 360 and so on. So this is the value for a plus b, and among the values given that we have computed, the values given here, option A matches for 7 by 2, right? Very interesting problem. Rearrange it carefully and see that this side is always greater than or equal to 3 and this side is always less than or equal to 3, less than 3 and greater than minus 3. So the only value that is a solution for this can be 3 on both sides, for which this should be 1. Sorry, this should be 0, so x should be 1, and that gives us this equation, and sine inverse of a plus b is minus 1 has these solutions, and so on actually. Okay, question number 18. 15 coupons are numbered 1, 2, 3 up to 15 respectively. 7 coupons are selected at random, one at a time with replacement. You pick something and put it back. The probability that the largest number appearing on selected coupons is at most 9 is, that is, of the number that you of the numbers that you get in the coupons, the largest number should be 9. That is, the favorable outcomes can be only 1, 2, 3 up to 9. So there are 9 favorable outcomes, totally 15 outcomes. So the chance of getting our event, let us call that event A, is 9 by 15 or 3 by 5 in one trial. If I am just picking one coupon, and then there is 3 by 5 chance for it being less than or equal to 9, right? Okay. Now, if there are 7 coupons selected like this with replacement, then each turn becomes independent, right? Each turn is independent of the next turn. Therefore, the answer would be probability is 3 by 5 for the first, 3 by 5 for the second, 3 by 5 for the third, and so on 7 times. So the answer is 3 by 5 raised to 7. Alright. Now this is option B, 3 by 5 to the power 7. Let us consider if the same question were asked with replacement, how would you proceed? If it is with replacement, the first one to be less than 9 would be 9 by 15. And the second one, you would have only 8 possible values out of 14. So it becomes 8 by 14 because one of the values is already chosen. And the third one would become 7 by 13 and so on, right? And the last one, the 7th one, would be 3 by 9, right? Yeah, it would be 3 by 9. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are the 7 coupons. And then you multiply all these and you get the result of the net probability will be the result of the product of all these things. Let us go to question number 19. For x is a real number, x not equal to 0, if y of x is a differentiable function such that x integral of 1 to x y of t dt is equal to x plus 1 integral of 1 to x t y of t dt, then y of x equals. Alright. Now this needs one idea called the differentiation under the integral sign. That is, if you have a function of x comma t and you are integrating it with respect to t between limits which are also functions of x, let us say g1x to g2x, this can be differentiated with respect to x because this whole integral is going to be a function of x in the end, right? After you integrate and substitute x here for t, you will get a function of x. So this can be differentiated with respect to x. And this is written as a summation of 3 terms. The first term is the integration of the differentiation of this function, but with respect to x alone. You differentiate this function with respect to x, treating t as a constant. Strictly speaking, this is a partial differentiation in mathematics, which means you differentiate this function considering x as the independent variable and t as a constant. dt. Then the next term involves the upper limit. So what happens? You put that upper limit in the place of t and then differentiate the upper limit and then subtract the same thing for the lower limit. Put the lower limit and differentiate the lower limit. Okay? So differentiate the function, do the integration, put the upper limit in the function and differentiate the upper limit, put the lower limit in the function, differentiate the lower limit with a minus sign. In our particular case, if you see, we have integral of usually only functions of t, no? Both of these are functions of t, they are not functions of x at all. And this is 1 to x. So we can reduce this to a convenient form that can be used for our particular problem. You see this differentiation df by dx, since inside there are no x terms, the first term becomes 0, right? And if you see here, dg by dt is nothing but dx by x because our upper limit is x, our lower limit is 1. which means this term dg1 by dx is going to be 0. The lower limit is a constant, so this is 0 and this is also 0. And since the upper limit is x, I have dx by x, which is 1, and this, there is no function of x inside, it's only a function of t. So this will become f of the upper limit, remember, and the upper limit is again x, so f of x. So what we have is d by dx of integral 1 to x f of t dt is f of x, remember. So in our problem, whenever we are going to differentiate any integral of this form, integral 1 to x, something there, it's going to be just that function with x replacing t. Understood? D by dx of integral 1 to x f of t dt is just f of x. Okay. Let us now start solving the problem. Let me write this here once. D by dx of integral 1 to x f of t dt is going to be f of x. Now our question is x into integral of 1 to x y of t dt is equal to x plus 1 integral 1 to x t into y of t dt. Alright, so let us differentiate the whole equation with respect to x, and remember these are product forms, right? So let us start with the left hand side. When I differentiate this, let us keep the integral constant and differentiate x, that gives us 1. Secondly, let us keep the x constant and differentiate this integral. Now if you differentiate this, what did I tell you? D by dx of integral 1 to x y of t dt, according to this, is just y of x. So this becomes 1 to x y of t dt plus x into y of x. Okay. RHS the same way, product form. If I keep the integral constant t into y of t dt, I get 1 again, and then if I keep x plus 1 constant and differentiate this, this is like f of t, and substitute x here, so it becomes x into y of x. Simple. Now let us write the LHS is equal to RHS. So integral 1 to x y of t dt plus x into y, I am just writing y of x as y. On the right hand side is 1 to t y of t dt, and this is nothing but x plus 1 into xy. Okay, this is going to give me two terms, x squared y plus xy, right? And that xy and this xy can be cancelled. So if I bring this integral to this side, I get something very nice. Integral 1 to x y of t, I can combine the two integrals because both are integrals 1 to x, minus t into y of t dt is nothing but x squared y. Let us differentiate the whole thing once more, and remember, while you differentiate this, it is going to become f of x. Just substitute x in the place of t everywhere. So this, if I differentiate the whole thing again, d by dx of everything, I get y of x minus x into y of x is differentiating here as a product, x squared into dy by dx, keeping this constant, differentiating this, and keeping y constant and differentiating x, you get 2x, right? So this is nothing but y minus xy is x squared dy by dx plus 2xy. Take 2xy to that side and the x square also to the other side. Let us see. We get, first of all, taking 2xy to the other side, y minus 3xy will be equal to x squared into dy by dx. And then if I take y common and bring it here, take the x squared there, What I mean is y into 1 minus 3x upon x squared will be dy by dx. Now this is a very simple differential equation, variable separable form. Dy by y is nothing but 1 by x squared minus 3 by x times dx. Integrating this is ln y is minus 1 by x minus 3 log x plus some constant. Now this can be written as log of y plus 3 log of x is minus 1 by x plus c. Now what is log of y plus 3 log x? This becomes y log y plus log x cube, and log of y plus log of x cube is log y x cube is minus 1 by x plus c. Raised to e on both sides, y x cube becomes e raised to minus 1 by x plus c, or y is 1 by x cube into e raised to minus 1 by x into e raised to c. Now this is going to be another constant. So basically the answer is c by x cube e raised to minus 1 by x. C by x cube e raised to minus 1 by x. Is there an option like that? Option D, c by x cube e raised to minus 1 by x. So a bit intricate but not very difficult. Remember the differentiation under the integration sign, which in our particular problem, this problem becomes just f of x. Differentiating the integral gives f of x. And do the differentiation on both sides. Keep in mind the product rule and simplify that term. And you have to do one more differentiation under the integration sign here to get the actual differential equation, which can be solved easily by variable separable to obtain the answer. Moving on to question number 20. If O is the origin and OP and OQ are distinct tangents to the circle, x squared plus y squared plus 2gx plus 2fy plus c. We know that for such a circle, center is minus g minus f. Alright, let us see how the whole scenario is going to look like. Now I need a circle, and they've said there are distinct tangents to the circle from the origin, right? Which means there are two tangents from the origin to the circle. So therefore, one of the tangents should be like this. Let us call this OP, and the other tangent should be something like this, OQ here, right? OP and OQ. Now the center we know is minus G minus F. Now the circumcenter of the triangle OPQ. So this triangle OPQ, what would be the circumcenter? Tricky question, because you try to find the points here and then try to find the circumcenter here, the problem will never get over. But if you remember that completing this quadrilateral, let us call the center as C. The quadrilateral OPCQ is a cyclic quadrilateral, which means the opposite angles here add to 180 degrees, right? Because the tangent and the radius are always perpendicular to each other. So such quadrilaterals where the opposite angles add to 180 degrees are called cyclic quadrilaterals. And what is the important property of cyclic quadrilaterals? You can always draw one circle that circumscribes all the vertices of the cyclic quadrilateral. So there will be one circle which passes through O, P, Q and C. If you remember in your geometry, the constructions, this is how you would draw a tangent. You get this circle first and then you draw the tangents. This is that circle. Now, see, this OPQ triangle is also circumscribed by the same circle, right? Therefore, this circle's center, that is OPQ's center, is the circumcenter actually. How to find OPQ's, that is the circle's center? Now we know that this angle is 90 degrees and only the diameter can subtend 90 degrees, right? So this origin and minus G minus F are the ends of the diameter. OC is a diameter. So therefore the center of this circle C1, let us say, is 0 minus G by 2 and 0 minus F by 2. which is minus G by 2 minus F by 2. So this is the circumcenter. See, we calculated it without any calculation of the lines or the perpendicular bisectors or anything like that. Remember the cyclic quadrilateral idea, and that the circle itself is circumscribed by that circle. So the diameter, and then this is the center. But the option is not there anywhere, so the actual answer is none of these. Okay. 21. Now we start the subjective numericals. The in radius of the triangle having sides. What is the in radius? We know the in radius is nothing but the radius of the in circle. That is a circle here. This will be at the same distance. That is, the sides are at the same distance from this point. This is the in center I. And you know this in center is nothing but the meeting point of the angle bisectors, right? Okay. Now these are angle bisectors. The in radius is very simple. If you remember, there is a direct expression for that. In radius is the area divided by S. S is the semi-perimeter, A plus B plus C by 2. And area, of course, you know, using that Heron's formula, S into S minus A, S minus B, S minus C. Right? So let us calculate these here. What will be the S? 26 plus 28, let us take them in that same order. A is 26, B is 28, and C is 30. So this would give me 84 by 2 or 42. And then let's calculate the area. Area will be square root of 42 into 42 minus 26 is 16. 42 minus 28 is 14. 42 minus 30 is 12. So if I rewrite 42 as 14 into 3 into 16 into 14 into 12. Now this is a perfect square. This two combined to be a perfect square. This 36 also is a perfect square. So the answer is 14 into 4 into 6. 14, 4 and 6 for this 36. Let's keep it like this because we have to divide for the in radius, area and the semi-perimeter. So 14 into 4 into 6 upon 42. This is 3 times, this is twice. So the answer is 8 units. So the in radius of the circle is 8 units. So the answer to the subjective problem, 8. Question number 22. Let the sum of n is 1 to n, 1 by n, n plus 1, n plus 2 written in the rational form be p by q, where p and q are co-prime. Then the value of q minus p by 10 boxed, that is the greatest integer function of that value, is what? This is very simple if we consider how to decompose this term. What do we mean? Take this as 1 by n plus 1 times 1 by n into n plus 2. Alright? Split this into partial fractions. This is very easy. If you see that 1 by n minus 1 by n plus 2 will give you n plus 2 minus n, which is 2. So this into 1 by 2 is a partial fraction. Therefore, the term of the summation can be written as half of 1 by n into n plus 1 minus 1 by n into n plus 2. So the summation is over all these terms, all such terms, n is 1 to 9. What have we accomplished by this? Enumerate the individual terms, keep the half out, and what do you get here? The first term would be 1 by 1 into 2 minus 1 by, sorry, here there is a mistake, n plus 1 into n, n plus 1 into n by 2. Okay. So this is n plus 1. Let me just make it quite clear. So this is nothing but n plus 1 into n plus 2. Okay. So when n is 1, this is 1 into 2 minus 1 by 2 into 3. The second term would be 1 by 2 into 3, here 2 into 3 and 3 into 4, minus 1 by 3 into 4. The next term would be 1 by 3 into 4 minus 1 by 4 into 5 and so on. Consider what will happen when it is 8 for example, it is 1 by 8 into 9 minus 1 by 9 into 10. And when it is 9 itself, it becomes 1 by 9 into 10 minus 1 by 10 into 11. So you see, all the internal terms would cancel each other, including this. The consecutive terms will cancel each other, only the first and the last terms remain. This is a very important technique for such summation problems. So 1 by 2 of, this is 1 by 2 and this is 1 by 110. So the LCM is 55 minus 1, or 1 by 2 times 54 by 110, which is 27 by 110. Now these two are co-prime already, because 27 is 3 into 3 into 3. The denominator is nothing but 2 into 5 into 11, no common factors, right? So that is equal to P by Q, implies P is 27 and Q is 110. Now the question is to calculate the value of greatest integer function of Q minus P upon 10. So Q is 110 minus P is 27 by 10. This becomes 83 upon 10, which is 8.3, right? The greatest integer function of 8.3 is 8 again. So the answer to this problem is also 8. Very simple if you decompose these terms properly, and then you see that the series simplifies itself to a very convenient summation of two terms alone. 23. In a triangle ABC, if angle A is equal to angle B is equal to half of sine inverse of square root of 6 plus 1 by 2 root 3 plus sine inverse of 1 by root 3, and the length of the side opposite to C is 6 into 3 power 1 by 4. Now we have a triangle here, and they have given that two such angles are equal. This angle A and angle B are equal. Okay, and angle C, nothing about angle C, but the side opposite to that, there is this side, is 6 into 4th root of 3. Okay, now let us solve for angle A and B. Let us solve for this expression. Do you still remember that sine inverse of x plus sine inverse of y is nothing but sine inverse of x into square root of 1 minus y square plus y into square root of 1 minus x square. So here this is going to be tricky to square this and all that. Let us do it very carefully. So keep this half outside, and I am going to just simplify this whole bracket. So this is becoming sine inverse of x is square root of 6 plus 1 upon 2 root 3. 1 minus y square under root is 1 minus y square is simple, 1 by 3, plus y is 1 by root of 3 into square root of 1 minus x squared is going to be this whole term squared, which is 6 plus 1 plus 2 root 6 under 2 root 3 square is 12, right? Okay, first step's done. So sine inverse of, here this is going to be root 6 plus 1 by 2 root 3 into root 2 upon root 3, and this is going to be 1 upon root 3 square root of 12 minus 6 minus 1, right? When you take LCM here, 12 minus 6 minus 1 is 5 minus 2 root 6 upon 12. 12 is again 2 root 3. Okay, so the denominator is a simple denominator. Now let us consider the numerators. Sine inverse of, the denominator is going to be 2 root 3 into 3. This is also 2 root 3 into 3. 2 root 3 times 3 is 2 into 3, which is 6. And the numerator here is root 12 plus root 2. And then here I have this term. To solve this, all you have to do is write this as 3 plus 2 minus 2 root 6. Right? What is the advantage? You see, 3 is nothing but root 3 square plus 2 is nothing but root 2 square, and that root 6 is nothing but 2 root 3 into root 2. Right? So there is nothing but root 3 minus root 2 the whole square. So root 3 minus root 2 the whole square. So sine inverse of root 12, again 2 root 3 plus root 2 plus root 3 minus root 2 the whole square can be written as root 3 minus root 2 under square root by 6. So this becomes 2 root 3 plus root 2 plus root 3 minus root 2 by 6. We ignore the negative part. So that I get 3 root 3 sine inverse of 3 root 3 upon 6, or sine inverse of root 3 upon 2. So now this at least we know can be pi by 3 or 2 pi by 3, because within a triangle the angles cannot be more than 180 degrees, let us say. Therefore, let us keep these two values. Now which one of these two values should be chosen so that A can be calculated? Because if this whole thing is pi by 3, then A will be pi by 6, A and B, that is this angle, so will be pi by 6. Or if it is 2 pi by 3, then A can be pi by 3. How to choose? If you see carefully this term here, root of 6 plus 1, numerically how much is it going to be? Root 6 is 2.4, something around 2.4 plus 1. By 2 root 3 is 2 into 1.732 is also about 3 point. So the numerator is also 3.4 by 3.4. Of course the numerator will be less than the denominator. Sign cannot be greater. So therefore this is almost a value close to 1. So this whole angle is going to be 90 degrees. Close to 90 degrees, let us say. Right? So the summation of this and another term cannot be less than 90, which is pi by 3. So I am choosing 2 pi by 3. Okay. So A and B are equal to half of that 2 pi by 3, which makes A and B pi by 3. And this is good news for us, because if these two angles are pi by 3, then this is an equilateral triangle. This also becomes pi by 3. And this side is given to be 6 into 3 to the power 1 by 4. So the area of the equilateral triangle is nothing but root 3 by 4 times the side squared. So it is root 3 by 4 times. The side here is 6 into 3 power 1 by 4 the whole square, which is root 3 by 4 into 36 into 3 to the power 1 by 2. 3 to the power 1 by 2 is root 3. So root 3 into 36 into root 3 by 4, which is 3 times 9 or 27. Right? Quite simple. So the answer is 27 square units. Remember, there are two very important things here. One is to simplify this using this idea, right? Rewrite this as 3 plus 2, and this is root 3 square, root 2 square, and this is root 3 into root 2. So a square plus b square minus 2ab form. So that way you can come out of this. The second is to note that this is almost close to 1. Therefore, this angle is very close to 90 degrees. So the summation of these two should be greater than 90 degrees. Okay, let us come to the numerical 24. If sine inverse limit x tends to 0, sine inverse of x minus tan inverse of x by x cube equals L, the value of 4L plus 1 is. Now obviously this is 0 by 0 form. Sine inverse of 0 is 0, 0 minus 0 by 0, right? So let us apply the L'Hospital's rule. Excuse me. If you know, L'Hospital's rule says if there is a 0 by 0 form, differentiate the numerator and differentiate the denominator. So this becomes limit x tends to 0. Differentiating the numerator, I get 1 minus x, root of 1 minus x square, minus 1 by 1 plus x square, and this is 3x squared, right? Now this is still 0 by 0 form, but this can be handled a little easily. Look at these terms, and if I simplify, take the LCM and simplify it, I can write it as 1 plus x squared minus square root of 1 minus x squared upon 3x squared into square root of 1 minus x squared into 1 plus x squared. Okay. Now there's an interesting way of rationalizing this term. You consider this part as A and this part as B. Okay. So what you have is A minus B, kind of. Okay. Now A minus B can always be written as A squared minus B squared by A plus B. What is the advantage? This A minus B makes this term, the numerator, 0. But if it can be replaced by A plus B, and then if the numerator with this will also get simplified, then there is a chance of doing this problem in an easier way. So A minus B is equal to A squared minus B squared by A plus B, and remember this is A and this is B. So the numerator can be written as A squared, that is 1 plus x squared the whole square, minus B squared is square root of 1 minus x squared the whole square, upon A plus B is 1 plus x squared plus square root of 1 minus x squared. For the time being, keep the denominator as such. We'll just simplify this a little more and then substitute it back there. This is nothing but 1 plus x raised to 4 plus 2x squared, correct? And then I have minus 1 plus x squared, correct? The whole squared is going to be 1 minus x squared, and then when you bring this minus inside, it is like this, by 1 plus x squared plus root of 1 minus x squared. Now here 1 and minus 1 are gone, so I have x power 4 plus 3x squared in the numerator. So if I take x squared common from that, I get x squared plus 3 upon 1 plus x squared plus root of 1 minus x squared. Now you put this here. For this A minus B, you put this whole term and then you see what happens. So it is x squared into x squared plus 3 and this denominator first. So 1 plus x squared plus square root of 1 minus x squared, and the denominator that was there already is 3x squared into root of 1 minus x squared into 1 plus x squared. Limit x tends to 0. Now if you cancel x squared and x squared from both terms and apply x tends to 0, you get in the numerator 0 plus 3 into 1 by 1 plus 1 into 3, and you have 1 into 1. So this is 3 by 6 or 1 by 2, right? So 4 times this limit is 1 by 2, 4 times this limit plus 1 is 4 into 1 by 2 plus 1, which is 3. So the answer to the problem is 3. Okay, very simple if you consider that this is L'Hospital's rule, and then rationalizing this using this idea that gives in this cancellation of these terms. Now of course this would be far easier if you remember the series expansions for sine inverse of x, tan inverse of x, etc. See, all you have to remember is only the first 2 terms, because we need only the x cubed term, right? Because what do I mean by this? You see this equation, we have sine inverse of x minus tan inverse of x upon x cubed. Now sine inverse of x is x plus x cubed by 6 and then so on some other terms. Tan inverse of x is x minus x cubed by 3 plus and so on. Okay, if you remember these expressions and all these higher powers of x, when you subtract them both, sine inverse of x minus tan inverse of x is nothing but x cubed by 6, x and x are gone, minus x minus of minus x cubed by 3, which is plus the higher terms. This is x cubed by 2 plus all the higher terms. Therefore, the limit becomes x cubed by 2 upon x cubed, which is 1 by 2, even before applying this, because this 0 will make all the higher terms 0. Okay, and then 4l plus 1 is the same 3. So if you remember series expansions, these problems also can be done very quickly. Let us come to the last question. A farmer F1 has a land in the shape of a triangle with vertices at 0, 0, 1, 1 and 2, 0. So this is farmer 1's boundary in red. 0, 0, 1, 1 and 2, 0. From this land, a neighboring farmer F takes away the region which lies between the side PQ. Oh, let us name this. This is PQR. Between side PQ and a curve of the form y is equal to x power n, n greater than 1. So that curve y is equal to x power n will always pass through 1, 1, right? It passes through the origin also, 0, 0 satisfies this, and 1, 1 also satisfies this. So what we are looking at is the curve of this form. Y is equal to x squared, y is equal to x cubed, everything would pass here. So this blue area is taken away by the second farmer, F2. Now they say that the area taken by the second farmer is exactly 30% of the area of triangle PQR. Then what is the value of n? Now the triangle PQR, the area is quite simple because the base is 2 units, height is 1 unit, right? This is the base, this is the height. So the answer is 1. So the area of triangle PQR is 1 and 30% of triangle PQR is 3 by 30% of 1, which is 3 by 10. Yeah, 3 by 10 is what I meant to say. Okay, so farmer 2 takes up this area. We know this curve is y is x power n. So the area that farmer 2 has taken, area of farmer 2 is nothing but integral. What is this line? This line is nothing but y is equal to x, right? Y is equal to x. So integral x minus x power n dx from 0 to 1. X minus x power x is the area between the curves. So this gives me x square by 2 minus x power n plus 1 by n plus 1. And when I substitute 0 to 1, this becomes 1 by 2 minus 1 by n plus 1, or n plus 1 minus 1 by 2 times n plus 1, n by 2 times n plus 1. Alright, n minus 1, this LCM would be n plus 1 minus 2 by, so n minus 1 upon 2 times n plus 1. So if n minus 1 upon 2 times n plus 1 is the area of farmer 2, this is equal to 30% of that area of farmer 1. This would give me 10n minus 10 is nothing but 6n, carefully, and 2 into 3 is 6, right? So plus 6, or 4n is 16, n is 4. So that curve should be of the form y is x power 4 if this condition is to be met. So the answer to this problem is n is equal to 4. This brings us to the conclusion of the mathematics part of NTA test paper 2. I hope you followed the solutions and that they were clear enough. I'll meet you again with the solutions of NTA test paper number 3. Signing off, this is Santosh Jude from Parth Tank Mathematics Institute, Ahmedabad.